Hi, I'm Nancy Gulbranson, and I'm here tonight because I'm going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite vegetables that I actually ate as a child, and my mom taught me how to make it, and I make it today for my family. So the star of the show, which I want to show you that first, is a rutabaga. And I have purchased many a rutabaga over the years, and it's funny when you go up to the checkout line and there's a younger checkout girl, they sometimes look at this like it's an alien vegetable, and they don't know what it is. And so I have to oftentimes prompt them, it's a rutabaga. And that doesn't necessarily happen in Spring Grove because we, I think, sell lots of rutabagas here, but it has happened to me in other places. But let me explain to you a little bit about rutabagas. This would be considered a large. I would consider this one a large one. And you can get them as tiny as a small. And for those of you that might want to just put a little bit in a soup or a stew, or you're a single person and you don't need a lot of rutabaga, you can absolutely go that route, and of course every place in between. But this would be considered probably a large and one that I normally purchase. I want to tell you that they're very good in a lot of nutritional value, and so it's good to eat this, and it's also considered a root vegetable, which typically then a lot of root vegetables are eaten in the winter time. I want to tell you a little bit, if you've never eaten a rutabaga and you want to know, I wonder what it tastes like. If you were to take a turnip, which maybe a lot of people have eaten a turnip, and if you have cabbage, and you were to put these two together, you would end up with the flavor of a rutabaga. And so that's the best way that I can explain it to you. Before I begin the peeling process, and it takes a little bit of time, and the cutting into cubes, which also takes a little bit of time and a lot of safety precautions, I want to explain to you that over the years I have learned that rutabagas can indeed have a little bit of a bitter flavor to them. And so because of that, I was taught actually at a Christmas, or I should say, I think it was a Lutefisk dinner that I went to in Greenfield Lutheran Church in Harmony, and their rutabagas were delicious. And I said, I wonder how they prepare them. And my mother-in-law, Margaret, told me they soak it in sugar water for a couple hours before cooking it. And so since then, I have always done mine with a little bit of sugar water, and I want to get that going for you at this point. Take your kettle that you're going to be using. I've got this about halfway full, and it's simply just the water I'm going to be using. And I'm going to just eyeball a little bit over a half a cup of sugar, granulated sugar. And we're going to stick that in there. And I'll set that aside. And now to dissolve the sugar, since we don't want granules on our rutabaga, I'm going to put this on the stove and just get it heating, and that will dissolve our sugar. So I'll get that going for just a minute. And I'm simply just going to heat it until the sugar dissolves. To our rutabagas at this point, I want to show you that first of all, it's covered in wax. If you buy that in the grocery store, I don't know if you can see the wax. I'll peel some off with my fingers here. And you're going to say, oh my goodness, what is that? Well, it's supposed to be there. Rutabagas, when they come out of the ground, start to lose their moisture quite quickly, and they become wrinkly and kind of soft. And so when they take them out and they're processed, ready to go to the grocery store, they're plunged in a food grade wax. And of course, that's what's on here. And it does keep for quite a long time. I keep mine, of course, in the refrigerator. If you buy them in the cooler in a refrigerator, that tells you how you should store it. So definitely would do that. I'm going to use a little bag here to collect. And I simply use a peeler. I think my mom used to take a paring knife, and she would go ahead and she was very good and adept at using that. I just find this is a little easier for me, and I just keep spinning it. And this, of course, on a large takes you a little bit of time. but I'm just pulling off a small amount of rutabaga skin, and the wax is coming right off, because what's underneath it is not wax. That's just the pure vegetable in its form. This one's peeling beautifully. I can tell they just got fresh rutabagas up at Red's IGA, in amongst their lutefisk and their oysters. They have all kinds of good things. Their meatball mix that a lot of people use in their menus over Christmas. Probably one of my favorite nights of the year is Christmas Eve. Norwegians really like Christmas Eve. It's typically when we would get together as a family and have our meal. Typically we would go to church first for candlelight services, but then we would also, after our wonderful Norwegian meal, open presents that night, because Santa Claus would arrive the next night. Now, do I use it all? Absolutely. Even where it was cut off from the ground. The one part had the greenery and the other part had the root. And I have noticed when you cook it, and we're going to be cooking it, it'll soften all of the flesh. Okay. All right, I'll put that right there. I'm going to throw away my mess so you don't have to look at this. These would just be peeling scraps, much like potatoes. Now, I use mine as a vegetable. They do say you could use it in place of potatoes, but I eat potatoes and my rutabagas, so I get them both. Okay. All right, now the harder part, and I will encourage you all to be very, very, very careful if you've never cut a rutabaga. You need to have a nice solid place to work on. A cutting board, of course, I prefer wooden. And then you need to have yourself a nice sharp chef's knife. And this is probably, how can I explain it? Almost as hard as a coconut, quite honestly. It's quite firm. But what I normally do is I start on the end and I rock and roll, shall we say. And I'm just going to keep doing a few of these. You wouldn't want to try to stab it. You could hurt yourself. But have your chef's knife sharp. And I just rock it back and forth. Now you're going to see when on the inside, you see this pretty yellowish color? When we cook it today, it'll turn bright orange. It's a gorgeous vegetable. Absolutely gorgeous. So we're going to flip that around a little more on this side. Again, if you didn't use the rocking motion, you could get yourself in trouble as you're cutting, and we don't want to do that. Yeah, you can see I'm struggling a little bit on here. Turn it over. If your knife gets stuck, you're better to take it back out and try it again. I think I'm going to try to turn another direction. Seems to be not going there, and I want to have success when I'm cutting this. There is no rhyme or reason as to which direction you cut it in. I am cutting the large slices now, and then when I get down to this point, I will cube it. We are getting there. Okay. And if you want to even be, when you get down to this point, you could even do the shorter route. That way you don't have... You can see how firm these babies are. There we go. Okay. Let me quickly check my sugar water. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. It has officially... You can see the sugar has disappeared. All you have is sugar water at this point. Nice, sweet sugar water. It's a little on the warm side, but we're going to let it sit. And like I said, it'll sit in my kitchen for a good 2 hours before I cook it. I do drain it, and I'll show you that process actually when we cook these. But at this point, I want to show you how. And I'm going to slide these to the side. Lay that down. Okay. So cube it. I usually go like that. I would say 1-inch cubes. Again, keep your fingers out of the way and use a nice firm stroke. There are your cubes. And we'll plop them in. And right now as we speak, it's starting to absorb that sugar water, which is making it through the pores just a little bit less bitter when you eat it. Plus, you know Norwegians, we love sugar. So as you can see now at this point, I do have all of the rutabaga cubed up, and it's still hard as a rock. And it needs to sit now in the sugar water, I would normally say about 2 hours. So you just leave it alone. If you want to put a cover on it, not heat, just leave it on your countertop and let it absorb sugar. Okay. So at this point, we have these soaked approximately 2 hours. They've, I'm sure, taken in some of that sweet sugar water. And we're simply just going to drain it off. Again, they are hard to the to the touch. A little bit more. And sometimes I leave just a tiny bit in the bottom because little sugar never hurts anybody. Just throw those back in. Okay. Okay. So these have been drained, and I've added some more water, and then I would put a cover on this, and then I will be boiling it. And as it's boiling, you can do other things in your kitchen. Today we'll talk about menu ideas. Okay, some menu suggestions for your rutabagas. First of all, I did say they're commonly eaten in the wintertime because they are a root vegetable. Oftentimes they are paired with things like carrots, so if you do like carrots, I've seen a lot of recipes that use that combination. I like to keep my rutabagas and my carrots separate, but that is an option. Again, typically on Christmas Eve, I would make it either with our meatballs and our lutefisk and our mashed potatoes and our gravy. And then our vegetable would be our rutabaga, which would be drained and again smothered with butter on the table, which then we use that on the lutefisk also. There are other wonderful uses. When you don't eat it on Christmas Eve, we always did it with a pork roast. So you would have a pork roast in the oven, and then you would add your rutabagas as your vegetable on the side of that. When I taught in Wyoming, I had a dear sweet friend from Cornwall, England. Edwina Johns was her name. And as she demonstrated to my kids and she sang in her language, she talked about pasties and making a pasty, which would include cubed or slivered potatoes, slivered onions, and cubed or slivered rutabagas, and then she would add steak to it. And it would go inside of a pie crust. And you would fold it over kind of like a half of a crust and crimp it and bake it in the oven. And it's absolutely delicious. If you've ever traveled to Butte, Montana, they have pasties all over the menus, as I believe they do in Michigan as well, that you can get those up there. Or at my house, which I can give you the recipe for that because it is a very good dish. I had last year talked to Lee Grippen's foreign exchange student who came from Norway when she was a young girl and stayed with him. And she told me her family serves it with a white sauce. And so that would be something you could also look at, would be cooking up your rutabagas. I believe she did use more of an emulsifier blender, and then she would almost whip them so they looked like potatoes. and then she would add her bechamel sauce on the top. Very, very rich. But they're cooked for about 25 to 35 minutes. You do need sure they're tender. And just do that to the fork. And then as soon as they're tender, normally I would, if I were closer to a stove now, I would drain it for my entire family. But I'm just gonna use a slotted spoon and take this right out of the water. And again, this would be like, for example, a portion. Like this is how much I would eat for my rutabaga vegetable, because I absolutely love rutabagas. We're gonna add a little bit of butter to it, and I shouldn't say a little, I like to add butter on it. And as the heat of the vegetables melt over the top, this butter melts right down, and you can always add a little bit more. Now at this point I would add a little salt and a little pepper, but I would have everybody at the table do it to your own liking. So this is what rutabaga looks like. Sometimes I have them get a little bit oranger. I don't know if it would be the typical brand or where this came from, but it definitely turned yellow. So you would make this at your evening meal, cover it in butter, and grab a pace. Mmm, delicious, delicious. So try rutabagas at your next meal. And I'll let Karen look at those. And again, a little salt and a little pepper would be good on the plate. And enjoy this during Christmas Eve or other winter nights of the year that you would like a wonderful vegetable. Thank you very much. Bye. Thank you.